one of the first things we had to do was begin in Louisiana and find out how far the Domingues get. And a lot of research has kind of already been done in this area. One of the things that Father Ken actually was told was that the name is not Dominguez. It's Domingue. Where the Z is actually silent. It's something I didn't even know, and I make that mistake. And I probably will, if I use the word Dominguez, or Domingue, or Domingue, it's all referencing to the same name. But in the islands, it's actually pronounced, it would have been pronounced Domingue. Okay? Looking through Louisiana records and things in the archives and the Baton Rouge and diocese and things such, we run across a series of Dominguez families. One of them being Manuel Dominguez, you can see up there. We do run across a Jose Dominguez that somehow arrived in Barataria, but researchers believe he either died in Barataria or moved somewhere else and his records are gone. There's also a reference to a Domingo Antonio Dominguez who settled in St. Martinville. Mr. Rogers Romero here can speak a little bit more about him. He came on the La Victoria, I believe. I'm not focusing too much on his family today, but if you have any questions, if you think you're related to his family and such, Mr. Rogers can help you over here today. There was also a Pedro Dominguez that settled in Galvez Town, but we believe he's actually not Canarian. We believe that particular Pedro who had family there, who had some of his children baptized in St. Gabriel, which was very common for the Galvez Town settlers. They end up moving to East Baton Rouge. You see their records show up in Baton Rouge. We believe it's all related to this Pedro from Seville. Okay? So our main focus today is going to be on Manuel Dominguez, and we believe to this day that is probably the largest Dominguez family of that surname that has carried on throughout to today. Speaking a little bit about that as well, doing a little bit of research on the internet, it seems that I was shocked to find that Manuel Dominguez and all Dominguez surnames tend to concentrate in Lafayette Parish on the other side of the pond. There's actually very little or not as many of that family surname that exists around Donaldsonville, Lafourche, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. While Lake Charles and Baton Rouge probably come in second and third place as far as that surname, the main majority, by far, 5 times as much, exist around Acadia, Vermilion, and Lafayette, and mainly Lafayette Parish. Okay, so if you are familiar with the name, you may see a lot of that name in those areas to this day. We have to introduce our sources. On the top left, of course, many of you are familiar with is the Diocese of Baton Rouge Catholic Church records. A lot of the sources, information. If you have never researched anything about Canary Islanders at all, if you're interested in your Dominguez, how their way of life, how did they live in the islands, why did they come here, what was life like when they arrived, how many were there are, you really need to take a look at the Canary Islanders of Louisiana by Gilbert Dinn. It's pretty much the default book that I point to all people getting started. And then from there you can continue on to other sources. Valaire's book down at the bottom right is also a fairly good resource. It seems he used a little bit different list. Their lists do conflict slightly. Some of that has been documented. And I want to highlight a book in the top right. This is a book by Bertha Domingue Bernard. She happens to be here today. She's sitting in the front up here. Be sure to talk to her after the presentation. Her book is The Origin of the Domingue Family in Louisiana. And I'm going to highlight some things out of that book today that are critical to lead us to where we're going to go. Overview of the Canary Islands. You see a map in the top right that I believe is 1750-ish, 1757, I believe, what a map of the islands would have looked like slightly before they would have arrived in Louisiana. Otherwise, our focus today is going to be on the island of Tenerife, and you can see that in the map at the bottom. These islands are located off the coast of Africa. These are some postage stamps as well as some postcards and a picture of what a Spanish frigate would have looked like in the 17th and 18th centuries. Get everyone an idea of what they would have boarded and how they would have come and what they would have dressed and looked like in some traditional outfits. And so we begin with Manuel Dominguez. According to Dinn and Valere, he was married to a Juana Francisca, who happened to also be a Dominguez as well. They had 4 children as far as we know, and they sailed in October and arrived in July of 1779 in New Orleans. From there, you can see on the right-hand side Din's reference, Valaire's reference, and a book by Padron written in 1908 or 09, where he also lists in Spanish the entire complete list of passengers on the ship. I believe I did not put this in the slides, but the ship is known as the San Decio de Loyola, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that is the ship that it came on. Okay, you correct me there. Turns out the same ship my Falcon ancestors are on as well. Just so happens to be that way. So you can see their ages listed there, and you can see the parents listed there as well. What we do know is that Manuel settled in Barataria first. It's where they placed him. Unfortunately, out of the 4 major settlements, this is the one that lasted the shortest amount of time, the least amount of documentation, and definitely almost no evidence today of that settlement. You can take a look. That was written, they were giving rations out to the people in 1782 to these people. He's listed in there, and we know they leave, and we believe they leave shortly after 1782. Most families did leave, and their children, one of them got married in 1784 in Ascension. So by 1784, we believe that the family has left Barataria, and they are now at the Valenzuela settlement in Bayou Lafourche. And so to give some reference, I like to show a lot of maps. I like to show a lot of detail on where things are at. As you can see in green, it should be green, you can see the areas highlighted in green where most of Isleños settled in South Louisiana. You see on the far right, Barataria, as well as St. Bernard. You can see that long strip on the left side, up and down the Lafourche River is where many of the Isleños would have settled. Pay close attention to where it says Valenzuela, and pay close attention to Pankerville. Okay. And we're going to focus on that general bend of the river right there. So as you can see where they settled in Barataria, they had to make their way all the way back to the Valenzuela settlement on the left side. So, looking at a map of 1829, we can take a look at, this is a New Orleans plat map by chance, that actually shows some of the existing Spanish land grants along Lafourche. And what we discover is, if you look carefully, you'll notice an Antoine Trujillo. Underneath that, you'll see J.R. Mina, or Mina. You'll see Joseph Diaz, and underneath that, you see Augustus. It's supposed to be Augustine, and it's supposed to be Augustin Dominguez. Pay close attention to where it says J.R. Mina. We believe that is Juan Mina, and we believe that is land that he owned at one point, and or his son at this point owns, but that also was Dominguez property. We believe those 2 properties on both sides of Joseph Diaz's land grant were Dominguez property. We get this out of census records of the late 1700s. It seems that those families have moved there at that point. At the bottom right, Google Earth presents us what that area would have looked like, and it's a lot of fields. So it doesn't seem very developed, but this is approximately where, on that side of the river, what the land would look like today. We start with the Spanish census of Lafourche and Valenzuela, provided to us by Mr. Albert Robichaud, who actually happens to be here today, surprisingly. Where is he at? Oh, he's up in the front. Excellent. Excellent. I'm so glad he's here. You recognize all of this stuff, of course. He has published at least 2 books, if not more. One of them on the militia of Louisiana, and the other one of the colonial settlers of Louisiana. And this material here comes out of those 2 books by Mr. Robichaud. As you can see in 1788 and 1789, the sons of Manuel are there, Antonio and Augustin. Don't pay too much attention to the dates. I say this because they don't make a lot of sense, especially for those first 2 years. I like to go with the dates past 1789, for you can see in only 2 years, Antonio became 6 years older, so clearly something's amiss, right? So we have to take some of the dates with a grain of salt and understand what we're looking at here. Same thing for Augustine. In 2 years, he turns out he's 9 years older. So maybe some of the dates either got written wrong or approximated, and or the transcriptions are a little tough. What we also do know is that in 1788 and 1789, I believe it is Antonio that's living up closer on the north side of the river. And by 1791, 1795, he has moved much closer to where the JR or the Juan Mina property is. And it seems that as if they stay there until their kids take the property in 1829. So continue on with Louisiana sources. We discover there's Manuel and there's Juana, and with their children. At this point, we don't technically know where they're from, although you see that up here. We know that they have children. They get married into the de Frank, or de Franc, I assume. I do not know how to pronounce that. The Gonzalez-Carbo family, the Hebert family, and the Trujillo family, as we mentioned earlier. These are the families that we can reference out of Diocese of Baton Rouge Catholic Church records. This is what we know of so far. Jose Roberto is listed there. We do not have any other information other than his birth. We take a look at the U.S. Census records, and you can see Augustine written there, Manuel and Antoine. They show a Manuel Dominguez in 1810. I am not convinced this is the ship ancestor. I'm convinced this is one of the sons of one of the brothers, and or maybe a grandson at this point. 1820 as well. He would have. We'll see a little later that can't possibly be the ship ancestor. This has to be one of the other sons or grandsons. And we also see other interesting names up there. We see Trujillo, we see Perez, we see Rodriguez, Suarez, Lopez, we see Hernandez as well. We see Marie, maybe the front, down at the bottom. Maybe she's a widow at this point. I'm not sure. She is listed there in 1820. This happens to be the French, maybe Spanish, I can't tell, of my Falcon's connection to the Dominguez line. This just happens to be in my personal archives. I just wanted to show you what the record looks like in the 1800s of when the two married, and that's how I'm connected to the Dominguez family through this marriage. And of course, we have to always reference the Diocese of Baton Rouge. As far as Louisiana sources are concerned, they give us a wealth of information. Many people here are very familiar with these books. While you may not be able to read everything here, this is out of volume 2. This is between 1778 and 1800. We want to pay close attention to one listing down at the bottom that says, Maria, when she got married, of Manuel and Juana Dominguez of Tenerife. It is where we begin our research outside of Louisiana. We point to this line here.